Hello, and welcome to a snack size episode of Home the Second Story. I'm Marilyn Modinger with Runcible Studios in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and Boston, Massachusetts.
And I am Sheri Scott with Springhouse Architects in Cincinnati, Ohio. And today we're going to talk about uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty when you're going into a big project like this. A couple of things off the top of my head. You know, the market, everyone's talking about uncertainty in the market, in the world, and environmental uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of that. And I would put in that list uncertainty of your own life, your own microcosm. If you're working on your own residential project, I don't know. I mean, I'm already 55 and I'm not sure what my life's going to look like in 20 years. I hope I do by now, but you just never know. So there is a lot of uncertainty to making these long-term decisions.
Yeah, and I think, is this the part where we reveal we're going to get out our crystal balls and say what?
100%. This is what is going to happen.
Give us
this
a
is what's
call.
going to happen in your town, with your school systems, with real estate,
with
everything.
With gas prices. Yeah, we
Right?
know right here. So yeah, I guess that's part of the point. If someone really did have a crystal ball and could tell you, like, this is sometimes what I tell my clients when we're deep into trying to figure out how to make decisions about what to do. Something as basic as, should I renovate or should I build new? Should I do this project at all? I mean, I'm having a lot of those conversations right now.
Me too.
I think sometimes there's a level of frustration on clients' part that I'm not able to provide, even though they know that I can't. Just like, we're just looking for someone to tell us what to do.
Yes.
And my joke always is, well, if I had a crystal ball that knew exactly all those things, I would not be working as an architect, right? Like, I would probably be, the government would have snapped me up long ago, and I would be, Secret Service level, the fancy glasses and, whatever.
Yeah.
What we do have, though, is a professional lifetime of working in uncertainty. So now that we have a sense that now is more uncertain than it ever has been. And, 10 years ago, things were so much easier to understand. Well, they're easier to understand because we've been through them, right? 10 years ago, things were still really uncertain. Just pick a year in modern memory, and there's a lot of things that are going on. We just tend to forget that It's sort of always been a little rough.
Life is unpredictable. It just is. And in my career, I know there have been two milestones. First being 2008 and the housing crash.
Yep.
So being a residential architect at that time, it changed the path of my career. And nobody knew. The longer you're alive, you know that things come in cycles. They come and go. So it is going to correct in some way. We don't know how, but everything changes. The second milestone, I would say, in my career was COVID. And even
big time.
Through this podcast, we've spoken to many people that started their project either during COVID or COVID hit right after they started, and talk about uncertainty. And there was absolutely no way for them to know ahead of time that was coming. Now we can look back at it and say, okay, because of those things, we've changed our practices. But talk about uncertainty in those times. We didn't even know where lumber was coming from.
Yep. I think that's a great point. And I think in some ways we are still dealing with the aftershocks of going through
For sure.
that. So that was not a singular event, kind of like the housing crash in 2008. That was not a singular event. And then the next day we started picking up the pieces.
Right.
We had no idea what was going on. We had no idea what to do next. Nobody knew is this a thing? Like, it's not like it happened one day and then the next day we were, well, let's pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. Like, we didn't know.
Right.
And same thing with COVID. I mean, that was a developing situation, and they had all these ripple effects that no one could have predicted. And in many ways, we're still dealing with all of that.
Yeah.
The supply chain has kind of corrected itself, but there are changes in the market and in the industry that will not go back to the way they were.
Yeah, pricing for sure. Pricing is just different. It's higher. Once people have the opportunity to increase prices, it's really hard to bring them back down. So that's on a more kind of global level.
Yeah.
Obviously, that kind of uncertainty where, at our desk and in our profession, we can help guide people through those things, but we have no control over them.
No.
And then as we get more granular down to your life and your lifestyle and what changes are you going to have? Life changes. Life is uncertain. So a couple different directions to take this, like, do I do the project or not? That has a lot of uncertainty in it. And then if I decide to do the project, how do I design? How do I design for the longevity of a home that should stand for hundreds of years, right?
Yep. Yeah. Or at least my lifetime, I think that's what matters here. So for example, in renovations, which we do a lot of, we talk a lot about, we make all the plans in the world, we figure everything out ahead of time. And the first moment that the contractors swing the sledgehammer and open up a wall, we discover new problems that we had no ability to predict.
Right. That's uncertainty.
We don't have x-ray glasses. I don't even want x-ray glasses if I could. But that moment, so we're preparing for that. And that's outside of all these macroeconomic situations, right?
Right.
So the way we prepare for that is we say, well, there will be surprises. So get ready. We will not be able to not have surprises. So there will be surprises. Number 2, the thing that fixes problems is money and time. So let's set aside extra money in a contingency so that when we discover that the sill is rotted out all the way around the back of the house and we have to jack up the house and put in a new sill and it's an extra $15,000, that it's not a fun day at the job site, but the homeowner says, this is really awful, but you know what? I'm really glad we discovered this and I've got money set aside to handle it. And also, so time's the other one, right? Understanding that the renovation is supposed to take 8 months, but prepare for it to take 12. Not because anyone is goofing around or dilly-dallying or doing the wrong things, but because that's life and things come up and you have to deal with it. So we've talked about interviewing contractors. We've talked about where you say it's not that nothing bad happened. It's how did the team recover? How did you prepare for the certainty that something will go awry and we don't know what it is
certainty
yet.
Yes,
right,
yes
and that's it. You prepare with money and time and emotionally, right?
Yes, and emotionally. Probably more important.
Yeah.
And it's not only in renovations, of course. I did a site walk with a client and a contractor, and we're probably 65-70% of the way through, but we have made 95% of the decisions. But now the costs of everything are kind of catching up. So this was kind of our last opportunity to make changes to be sure that we're going to be in budget when the end of the project hits.
Yeah.
And so that's a good example of a team working together to forecast, not that we're going to forecast every unknown thing that comes up or every price change that's going to come up, but it means we're keeping our eyes open and we're looking for these opportunities to stop, take a look around. Okay, where are we? Where are we on budget? What decisions do we still have to make? And we made some adjustments. We took out a couple of ceiling treatments that, it's going to be a blank ceiling, which is okay. I mean, what we had designed was way better, but this is the reality of the project. Like that ceiling in those 2 places is not going to happen. Anyone that walks in that project isn't going to know.
Right.
I'll know what we had planned for that. And maybe in 3 years, they'll, have some capacity to add some more things in. And that's something that can be changed in the future. So the uncertainty in new construction, when you're doing a truly custom home, a high-end custom home, all the way through, there are some uncertainties with cost when you're doing a cost plus project. And the way that you combat that is that you keep your eyes open, you keep communication open, you're open to changes to like bring the budget back into line, because that does tend to throw our clients sometimes, especially toward the end of a project. And as much as we can say in the beginning, we're going to work on this budget the entire way through, it never feels good. It never feels good. And it feels like it's uncertain, and it feels like we didn't have a handle on it, which is not necessarily the case. But if we can take our time step by step, and self-correct when we can, it'll make the end of the project great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the tools that I help my clients sharpen is I encourage them to look at other parts of their life where they deal with uncertainty every day and see how they can take those methods of coping and dealing with that and bring it to this process as well. So for example, things that may feel really certain just because you're used to doing them all the time actually have all kinds of uncertainty. Let's say planning a family vacation. And you've got it all planned out. You got your flight tickets, you got the hotel, you've made some plans for some different tours that you're going to do. And all of a sudden a hurricane comes through and you have to, let's say you're already there and a hurricane is coming through. What do you do? Do you stay? Do you go? What's the weather going to do? Can I get out? What am I doing? That's an extreme example, but you figure it out, and you deal with what's coming along. The other situations that are more everyday, like for example, okay, I know on Monday nights, we always make XYZ for dinner. Great. You go to the grocery store to get the supplies and the grocery store doesn't have one ingredient that you absolutely need because their truck didn't show up that day. Well, that's not your fault. You're not a bad planner. You're not bad at budgeting. You don't have a terrible team, whatever. You are just caught up in some other thing that had nothing to do with you. So you have a couple choices. Well, do I go to another grocery store? That takes time. Can I do that? Do I switch the meal for tonight? Do we order pizza? Whatever.
Yeah.
So that's contingency planning. And people do it all day, every day, whether it's there's a hurricane on vacation or whether the grocery store didn't have the ingredient I needed. And we're just here doing the same thing, just on a scale that is new to most homeowners.
Right.
They have not worked at the scale, which also means it's a lot more money. It's one thing if you're like, well, they didn't have the special cheese I needed. Okay, well, I'll go over here and it's $5 more. Well, it's not the end of the world. It's smaller dollars. when you're talking about dinner, right? So I get that.
No, but I like that example because it brings up for our listeners to understand what your tolerance of change is.
Yeah.
What's your tolerance to go through these things? And I know I've shared that I have not built my own house because I feel like my professional life is full of changes and unknowns and things moving very quickly. And so I don't have the tolerance right now in my life to make all of those decisions, to pivot when I need to, because I'm using up all of that mental capacity in my professional life. So if you know what your tolerance is, then that will help you decide what project you're going to do. Are you going to stay in your house and redo your kitchen rather than doing a full new custom home? You might end up doing a semi-custom home instead of a full on, like you choose every single thing. Maybe you find a semi-custom builder who's going to limit your decisions or your choices. So there are ways to mitigate the uncertainty even in these projects.
Absolutely. And I think knowing yourself, it's a theme we've talked about in the past as well. Knowing yourself and your capacity, whether it's because there's a lot going on in family or whether it's just a time of life or whatever, is really important. Sheri, you and I do custom homes. Mm-hmm. That's the most custom, the most number of decisions, the most, the most intensive process that you can go through.
Right.
You can just buy a house and you don't have to make any of those decisions.
You can. I've heard
you
that.
can do that.
Yes.
And so, and there's everything in between, right? Semi-custom as you're talking about. But I think the other thing here is that I've noticed over the years, my clients get really nervous about, is this the right time to do a project? Because maybe prices are going to come down.
Oh, never.
They never do. They never
will
do. The only thing that does are things like commodities. So lumber. So there was a time during COVID when lumber was 4x, and that was crazy. And then it came down. And I remember it because my client had to buy a lumber package at that exact time, and we could not wait.
But you didn't know it was going to come down.
Didn't know. Yeah. Right. So yes, lumber fluctuates. It's a commodity. So it's fluctuating on the markets every minute, right? But now that, manufacturers know that consumers are able or willing begrudgingly to pay X dollars, they're not going to next year make that same product X minus 20%. Like, they're just not. So, I always say that the best time to do a project is right now or 10 years ago. Like,
yep.
I have clients who have put off their project 3 times because they're worried about pricing. If they would have done it the first time, it would have cost less than half of what it would cost today to build. And it is so devastating. And every time they delay it again, I'm like, guys.
Yeah. And so now we have people saying, oh, no way I'm going to build now. It's so expensive. It's going to continue. It's going to just continue. I don't understand how it works. Somebody smarter than me knows how it all stair steps and catches up, but it will never be cheaper than it is today.
It won't. And I think a couple of the things that lead into that, and again, someone smarter than me as well has to explain this in more detail, but some of the things that aren't going away, the trade shortage. There has been a shortage of tradesmen for 30 years. Like, that trend. So if everyone goes to school and learns a trade tomorrow, we're 15 or 20 years away from having the same level of trade workforce that we had, back in the day. So there aren't enough qualified plumbers, electricians, carpenters, all this. This is what I hear from every single contractor that I work with. There's no one to hire.
Right.
All the kids want to be content creators. That's what they all say. So we'll see. The AI backlash is saying that, the safe place to work is in the trades. Well, okay, let's just say that everybody goes to trade school next year. Like I said, you can't just come out being a master carpenter. You need 20 years before you're a master. So I think that trend is something that will continue to push labor prices because labor is so squeezed.
Right. Because the people that will charge more, and good on them. But that's the cycle we're in right now.
Yeah. And labor is more expensive than material. So that flip-flopped sometime in the last century. That's why you see older historic projects with all these amazing details and all this stuff, because labor was cheap.
Gosh, tell me about it.
And it's just not that way anymore. So, and not that materials are cheap, but they're cheaper than labor. So I feel that's the only trend along those lines that I can really speak to. There's other factors around, manufacturing and supply chain and all these kinds of things that are also impacting material costs. And then, of course, interest rates. So that's one thing that does go up and down.
Yep.
And I certainly don't know about this either. Welcome to our podcast where we talk about things that we don't know
Things
about.
we don't know. We don't really understand.
But I mean, interest rates, I don't know. Are we ever going to see 2% again? That was such an aberration. And I think people have readjusted their expectations so much. They're like, 5%, that's insane. We're not doing anything. I'm like, well, when I bought my first house, which wasn't that long ago, it was 7.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we weren't flipping out. We were like, this is what it is, My parents were like, it was 17% when we,
Right. I know. My parents too. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's, they could come down, but waiting for interest rates to go back to 2 or 3%, I think is kind of a fool's errand.
Yeah. Agreed. So uncertainty. I mean, there's a lot of it there, especially in this market that we're in this field that we're in. There is a lot of uncertainty, but there are ways to make it more palatable. There are ways to, curb the ill effects of bad uncertainty. And there are always like some good surprises too. So,
That's right. Let's not forget the good surprises where you open up a wall and you find some amazing thing that you decide to reveal. Or we haven't yet found like in Boston, the joke is always that you're going to find the paintings that were stolen from the Isabella Stewart Gardner heist. No one has found those yet, no. As far as we know anyway. But being prepared for that, both good and bad, and being surrounded with a team who's being realistic. So not pessimistic, like, oh, well, everything's good, not being Eeyore about things, but also being realistic with you and making sure, hey, do you have that contingency? It needs to be for renovation, 20 to 30% of the cost on an old house. You need to have that set aside and being realistic with you. And then, the old adage of it's not that nothing bad is going to happen. It's how you react to it, I think is really important. So, and, we're like a broken record. We're here to help our clients get through that process. And a good design team is all about that.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks for joining us today on Home the Second Story for a quick snack. If you have questions for us or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you're interested in being a guest, reach out to us at admin@htsspodcast.com and follow us on Instagram. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Home, the Second Story podcast. Feel free to share this episode with a friend. Contact information for both of our architects are in our show notes. And don't miss future episodes. Follow or subscribe to our show for free in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now.